Pulitzer Prize winner Thomas Friedman's view on China-U.S. trade and how to look past the noise in our media-saturated landscape. Back, you're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. China and the U.S. announced last week that they have agreed to return to the negotiating table in Washington in early October. It will be the first face-to-face meeting since the tit-for-tat escalation of tariffs in recent months. One question is how to avoid the worst-case scenario and work for the better outcome. This is what many global thinkers are contemplating right now. Among them, Thomas Friedman, the three-time Pulitzer Prize winner and one of the most esteemed journalists in the world today. Among the pessimistic voices, he strikes a positive tone on the sideline of the China Development Forum, describing China-U.S. trade relations as one country, two systems, depicting the deep links of the world's two largest economies. In an exclusive interview with me recently, he explained it all. Your speech this time at the China Development Forum went viral in China.
That's an honor.
Both in Chinese and in English. People are very curious as to why, at this moment, when others sound so pessimistic, you wanted to have a rather encouraging tone about the bilateral relations.
Well, I wanted to be constructive. You know, Tian, I said in my talk, and I've said many times, I believe America and China are also one country, two systems, you know, we're one country in the sense that our fates are really tied together. America cannot rise, I don't believe, without a healthy relationship with China, and China cannot rise without a healthy relationship with America. And we've got to find a way for our two systems to maintain this healthy interdependence. And being here now in Beijing, talking to people, coming from Washington, D.C., talking to people there, it's clear to me that there is a will to solve this problem. But from my point of view, why be constructive? Let me just say, I don't believe there's any big problem in the world, climate change, cybercrime, nuclear proliferation, that can be effectively dealt with if China and America are not working together. And I don't think there's any problem in the world that can't be fixed if China and America are working together, no matter how big.
There is one big uncertain factor, that is the factor of leadership. Right. And what the one sitting in the office consider as the quality of leadership. Right. So when the president has been saying from the very beginning this will be more about a transition rather than a more sophisticated bilateral relation agenda setting, right. Do you think that might happen?
Right. I think we're at a very critical moment. Let me tell you how I see this, Jen. One is that, so America and China have a very unique relationship. We are economic rivals and economic partners. We are technological rivals and technological partners. We are geopolitical rivals and geopolitical partners. Without U.S.-China cooperation, there would have been no Paris Climate Agreement. Okay? So we have a very unusual relationship. Now, there are people in America who see China as the new Soviet Union. They think it's just another communist country, you know, that wants to take us, to take over the world. Okay? That is not how I see it. I think we have a very unique relationship with China, and we don't want to turn this into a Cold War, okay? China, remember, with Russia, the only thing Americans bought from Russia was vodka, caviar, and nesting dolls. With China, we are completely interdependent, okay? So, to me, the question is really three things. There's the bilateral trade issue, there's the Huawei issue, and there is global geopolitics. And unfortunately, my administration has not clearly delineated each one of those, and so they kind of blend together. At the same time, there's confusion in Washington to exactly what is President Xi Jinping's bottom line. Does he want to retain all the advantages China got early on in the WTO negotiations? Is he ready to compromise? Is he ready to put it into legal language? There's a new foreign Trade Investment Act now being written here. So I think both sides we need a timeout. Step back, okay? Let's lower the temperature, and let's go for some confidence-building measures where we say we can prove to China we're not out to make you into an enemy, to permanently tariff you, and President Xi can prove to President Trump that I'm actually ready to do changes, but I need to do them my own way, and in Chinese context.
Some suggest it's already in the process of decoupling.
Well, that's
Are
what
you
I'm fighting
worried about
again.
that?
I'm deeply, deeply worried about it, because we have our hardliners, you have your hardliners, both sides have people who think the worst of the other, and I am the enemy of those people. I think we are one country, two systems, and the world is better for that.
When a correspondent being parachuted into a country,
Absolutely.
there's very few references that he or she can refer to in terms of how to judge, how to have a round of references, and how to eventually put things into perspective for the readers at home, particularly when you have another editor at home trying to make it ever more dramatic given the pressure of social media recently. So it's a process, and yet I'm afraid we are in a very critical time to still do this learning curve. So this is a lot of things all at the same time, as you illustrated well. Technology, the way people want to create their own image and thinking, and the politics and the geopolitical change. So how do you see these entangled uncertainties?
Well, it puts a premium, therefore, on being serious as a reporter. I've been coming to China since 1989. So I've come, I believe, every year since 1989. So I've been able to travel all over the country. I do not, unfortunately, speak Chinese, but I spent a lot of time here trying to learn, the country. And so over time, you develop what I call some depth perception. Not just surface, but some depth perception.
That is the most important, most treasurable element.
And the other thing you develop are people you trust. So you're one of the people I trust. So if I come, I have a story idea, I can say, Chen, am I on the right track here? You know what I mean? But if I'm just parachuted in here, I have no one I trust. I may come with biases or misperceptions. You're going to get that problem. But it can be true for Chinese reporters coming to America too. You know what I mean? I see Chinese reporters there often, and to me, it's always about good and bad journalism. And you can do it in Chinese, you can do it in English, you can do it from Beijing, you can do it from Washington, and you're always going to have both.
When you have newspapers or websites of news that are becoming ever more partisan. Tom, I know you face a situation just like that, particularly with the election ever more closer. So how are you still going to be able to relatively standing as neutral and be able to give your views? I mean, after all, you're working for the New York Times, which has been portrayed by Donald Trump, at least, as the quote-unquote fake news. One could tell from this comment the relationship between New York Times and your president. So what about that?
So it's a moment where you really have to keep your head as a journalist. The president's attacked me personally.
I love that. Keep your head.
Keep your head. Keep your head on your shoulder. The president's attacked me personally on Twitter. I responded, but I responded in a respectful way. Okay. But you've got to keep your head in a couple of ways.
How come you're responding in a respectful way? If you are not responding in a respectful way, maybe in the way that your president did, you're going to be hot, probably even hotter than today. Tom, why you didn't?
I respond in a respectful way because I'm not just responding to him. I'm responding to his supporters. And when they see me respond, defend myself, but respecting him, they will respect and listen to my message more. I recently changed my business card, Ken. It used to say Thomas L. Friedman, New York Times Foreign Affairs columnist. It now says Thomas L. Friedman, New York Times Dignity and Humiliation correspondent. Okay?
I love
because I have learned over my 40 years as a journalist that the two most powerful human emotions are dignity and humiliation. If I humiliate you, you will never listen. But if I respect you, it's amazing what you'll allow me to say to you. And so that's really a tenet of mine. Now, with the media, we always have to remember that we are not the story. Okay, the story is the story. I'll tell you a story about the New York Times.
That's not easy these
Yeah,
days.
no, exactly.
Everybody wants to
be the story.
The story.
So in 1982, before you were born, I was the New York Times correspondent in Beirut in the Lebanon civil war and Israeli invasion. And my apartment was blown up in June 1982, and my driver's wife and 2 daughters were killed in my apartment. One of the worst days of my life.
One could imagine the anger you have.
And the New York Times did not let me write about it. My apartment was blown up. They said, "You're not the story. Look at all the other people whose buildings, and homes have been destroyed. You're not the story." We eventually wrote a little box because other people wrote about it. But that's the ethic, that's the news I was raised in. Today, too many reporters want to be the story. So if I'm covering the White House, I should not be tweeting about the White House, my opinion. If I'm, and the same on China. You can cover China as a story, but don't be tweeting about it. Same for Chinese covering America, okay? The need to separate your opinion from the news is more important than ever. But you also have to keep your head because it's so noisy out there. Yes. So why am I in Beijing? First, I get the honor of speaking for the, the CDF, but also, I'm a big believer, if you don't go, you don't know. If you don't go, you don't know. And now coming here doesn't mean I know, but it does reduce the chances that I get it wrong. And so I go around, I talk to as many people as I can, and I try to, balance out what I hear to see the signal through the noise. It's always about, for me, what's the signal? What's the story here? And
the real trend.
The real trend, because
and
it's so important today, Tim, because it's so noisy there. And so that's why I'm actually not on Twitter. The New York Times tweets my column. I occasionally tweet something, but I've never looked at Twitter. I don't know what Twitter looks like. I'm not on Facebook. I don't know what Facebook looks like. And I've never smoked a cigarette. And I plan to die saying all 3 of those things, okay? So, and the reason is it's too noisy. And if I'm always looking, what are they saying about me on Twitter, or Weibo, whatever, then I'm not focused on the signal. I'm focused on me, and I'm not the story.
It's about the story vis-a-vis the egoness of the reporter.
Exactly.
Or of the host, or of whatever.
Exactly. And the New York Times, CCTV, exists for one reason: to serve the viewers and to serve the readers. Not to serve you, not to serve me.
Where do you think we're going from here? I mean, we could say, Tom Friedman, of course. I mean, you are the biggest name probably of New York Times. Probably one of the very few biggest names in the U.S. media today. And therefore, you have the luxury to go out there and look and being invited and be able to write your views the way you want, with a little bit struggle with the editor, of course. But for most of the others in the trade, what's going to be their fate? I know now, Tom, many of our friends have quit.
Right, yeah, there's no question.
Really experienced, great journalists.
Of my generation and yours, too. I mean, there's no question. I'm so happy I had my career when I had it, number one. But I have a daughter who is the executive producer of All Things Considered.
I love that
Weekend
show. Could
edition.
You say hi to her?
I will do that. I talked to her this morning on NPR, and so it's a family business, and so I see the issues she has to contend with. But at the end of the day, Tim, whether my daughter's working for radio, whether she's 30 years younger than I am, I still believe this, is that good journalism that's produced by good reporting and good analysis still wins, still sells. Doesn't matter if it's on the web, on Weibo, on Twitter, on Chinese TV, or the New York Times. And that's what I always focus on. My view is, if you build a diamond hard reality around your journalism based on good reporting and good analysis, no amount of criticism will stick. And if you don't, no amount of tweeting will save you. So you might as well focus on building the diamond hard reality. It doesn't mean I get it right all the time, but I feel if you come out, if you struggle with it, if you find trusted colleagues where I can come and say, Tian, is this really this or that? As you have in my office in Washington, you'll get more things right than wrong. And if you're doing that, you're doing your job.
Thomas Friedman sharing his thoughts with us about China-U.S. relations and the ethics of being a journalist, especially in the noisy world of today. And that is all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Call us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Good night.